Hey, good afternoon and welcome to our last meeting of July. The summer's almost over. Yes, invocation tonight will be led by Councilmember Beatrice Thompson, and respects to the flag will be led by Councilmember Rick Lockridge. Please rise.
May we pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come again tonight thanking you for the privilege of assembling in these council chambers once more. And we're grateful, oh God, for your presence among us. As we deliberate the business of our city, help us to be guided by your direction in all the decisions that we make. We're thankful of the presence of citizens who are here, who are joining us out of interest for their community. As decision makers, we're thankful for our council members, our administrators, and our employees who work hard every day for the benefit of our community. Thank you for your healing power as we experience all kind of examples today. Give us strength and courage that we may be able to enjoy and to become power in your power. Thank you for your mighty, mighty blessings on all of us, dear God. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You know, occasionally when we have individuals within our community that are doing great things, we like to recognize them. And today on our agenda, we do have a case there where a young lady has done some special things, and we've done a proclamation for her. And I'm going to ask Satara to come up and stand beside me. And I think it's someone from the Girl Scouts that could represent the Girl Scouts, maybe. You're going to do the whole thing. Come on up, if you would. And if you guys be patient with me, I'll read the proclamation, and I'll allow her to kind of expand upon what I'm about to read. So it's a Girl Scout Gold Award. And whereas the Girl Scouts of America is a vital organization for girls who are growing up, enabling them to develop leadership and organization skills while also developing a sense of community. And whereas Satara Verabagu has not only proven herself to be an outstanding member of her Girl Scouts Troop 1127, but has also attained the most prestigious and highest honor bestowed on a Girl Scout, the Girl Scout Gold Award for her unique project, Healing Through Horses. And whereas girls who earn this Girl Scout Award going for the goal have spent a minimum of 80 hours putting their skills into action, create a sustainable community project that will inspire others to serve the community. And with approval of the Girl Scouts of Mountains to Midlands, South Carolina, and whereas Satara is further working on bringing this project to national significance and viability by developing a website titled Healing Through Horses, and is developing a Girl Scout patch program within this website that all girls can access throughout the country to use in their communities to help such programs gain visibility, volunteer, and the financial resources. And whereas there are only 7 steps to enable the Scout to create a project that will make an impact on her community: organizational, lead, network, explore, create, act, and reflect. And whereas May 5th of 2024 at Presbyterian Church in Clinton, South Carolina, a reception is being held to recognize these young women for their efforts and to present with their Gold Star Award pin. And whereas this is an outstanding achievement for which Satara Verabagu should be proud, the Girl Scout Gold Award is a distinction that will follow her throughout life and will be an inspiration to others of the leadership qualities and commitment this young lady has shown. Now, therefore, the City of Anderson recognizes Satara Verbagu as a worthy of this highest honor, congratulates her on her outstanding achievements, and encourage her to continue her commitment to excellence. Proclaimed this 24th day of July of 2023. Satara, well, first of all.
Good evening. I would like to say that it is an honor and thank you for having me here today. I have been a Girl Scout for 11 full years. Ever since I was a little girl, I dreamed about earning my Gold Award. It challenges a girl's dedication to not only bettering herself, but making the world a better place for others. I've always loved horses, and when I was 10, while working at a farm, I was introduced to equine therapy. It changed my life. Horses are very intuitive and sensitive animals that help teach people many skills. It was exactly what I had been looking for. It took my love of helping people and working with horses and put them together. My eyes were opened. Equine therapy is boundless. It is for anyone and everyone. All ages, races, religions, genders, and ability levels could feel the special connection with horses the same way that I do. It was such an amazing thing to experience firsthand, that horses brought people together and healed their souls. That passion followed me through my growing years. The life skills I've learned through horses have so many real-world applications. I'm constantly humbled and taught to be a better human through them. My national patch program educates girls on equine therapy while having them take action to help their community and local therapeutic equine programs. I'm here today being recognized for this Gold Award, Healing Through Horses. It's small, but it's a start. It is now my personal mission to share that same feeling I experienced through horses with as many people as possible, while also educating others on the benefits that this unique form of therapy has to offer. I want to thank the Anderson Mayor, Mr. Terrence Roberts, for his time, Lisa Hartman, the Director of Share Therapeutic Riding Program, the Girl Scout Council, Troop 1127, and my parents for their endless support. Thank you to the City Council for your time and recognition.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do me a favor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
One more item before we get into our meeting, and that's the election of Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. McEwen?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Each year, the Mayor Pro Tem shall be elected from the council membership and shall serve a term of 1 year. The Mayor Pro Tem serves in the absence of the mayor and a representative of the city and council at events, functions, speaking engagements, and other such duties and responsibilities otherwise attached to the office of the mayor. Prior to July the 1st of each year or soon thereafter, as may be practicable, the council shall elect from its membership a mayor pro tem for a term of 1 year from July the 1st to June 30th. We're going as soon thereafter. So we had a reminder that popped up that we needed to do this. So the council shall elect the member who has served the longest period of time as council person and is willing to serve as mayor pro tem. The person elected shall be succeeded by the person next in length of service who is willing to serve as mayor pro tem. The council shall have an election each year to name the next eligible member in the rotation. Mr. John Roberts is willing to serve as the mayor pro tem as the next in rotation. With that, the council can take a vote.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Stewart?
I think we're all going to say now, I'd like to make a motion that we nominate Mr. John Roberts as our next mayor pro tem.
First by Mr. Stewart, second by Mr. Newton. Any further discussion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. It's been an honor being your mayor pro tem for the last year. I appreciate all the fun duties that you bestowed upon me, and I know that John Roberts will do a fantastic job over the next year.
It's like code for everything I didn't want to do, I made you do.
It's
Yeah.
like code.
I'd like to thank you for
Thank you,
service
Matt.
for the last year.
No worries.
Thank you, Mr. Harlan.
Enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it. Thank you. So we had a first, a second. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have a new mayor pro tem. Thank you, John Roberts.
Looking forward to, we've got a busy year, so a lot of things happening.
Yes.
Feel like I'm gonna get a few phone calls.
Oh, yeah.
But not just because you want to be out.
No. They're all legitimate.
Double duty, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The minutes of our July 10th meeting were distributed. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes?
Make a motion that we accept them as presented.
We have first by Mr. Stewart,
Second.
second by Mr. Newton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes pass unanimously. We have a couple items of old business and several items of new business. Jumping right into the old business. Our first item is request second reading of ordinance 23-11 to amend Article 12, signage of the City of Anderson's zoning ordinance. Mr. McEwen?
This ordinance on second reading is part of Plan This City, implementing Plan This City, our comprehensive plan that we're finishing it up and that we've been working on for over a year now. Had a lot of community engagement throughout the entire process. Of course, we talked in great depth about this in multiple work sessions and also at the council retreat where we nearly focused 2 days on this subject matter along with the landscaping subject matter as well. With that, Mr. McKenzie, our Planning and Development Director, will go over some of the overview.
Thank you. As Mr. McEwen mentioned, we also talked about the landscaping and tree preservation section of the zoning ordinance to make changes to that in keeping with several community appearance standards. That was approved at your last council meeting. And one other element that we've identified that can significantly impact the appearance of the community is signage. And the current guidelines that we have are from 1998, and as you know, many of the practices and priorities that we have at the city has changed, and the guidelines need to be improved to be easier to understand and follow and enforce. So we've drafted new standards, and as the city manager mentioned, we've gone through those extensively through work sessions, through public input, and we've arrived at some new language. And just to touch on several of the things that you'll see in the guidelines, that your content-specific standards pertaining to things like political signs, real estate signs, are being eliminated for compliance with a previous Supreme Court ruling. That's what's happening all across the country. We're not eliminating real estate signs and political signs. We're just making sure that there's no content-specific standards in our guidelines. The language in the new ordinance is more straightforward, easier to follow. The sizes of the signs and the quantity of signs are being revised to ensure they are proportional to the buildings and lots in which they are associated. And also going along with that, the appearance and quality of signs will be enhanced with better sign materials and landscaping, along with monument-style signs. So essentially pole and your pylon signs are no longer to be allowed inside the city. One other element that's in the document is a comprehensive sign plan process, and that will allow people to have flexibility in the application of the sign standards through a discretionary approval process. And also one other thing, that conformance to the guidelines will be handled through various triggers for replacement with non-conforming signs, except with multi-tenant signage, which will have a 10-year amortization period. And at your last meeting on July 10th, you will recall that we had a lot of dialogue regarding this, also at a work session prior to that, to come up with some revisions to the language. And that language is in your packet, the revisions. You can see that, so you can see that has been revised in the package. Now, one other late revision, I handed them out just a few moments ago on this one single sheet of paper. It's still in that same section under non-conforming signs, but it's pertains to outdoor advertising signs or billboards. The draft language has them as being prohibited, which is still the case, but state law states that any existing signs must be allowed to remain and also be maintained. So essentially, the signs, the billboards that you see out there in the community now can remain. That number just cannot increase. So that's one section of the language that has changed since your packets went out. Specifically, you can see that on that single sheet of paper under Section E, where it says any legally established non-conforming off-premises outdoor advertising sign may be maintained and modified, including but not limited to business rebranding, change of ownership, or transfer of the property in accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws Title 39. So we wanted to add that to make sure we're in compliance with the state code. So that's the only other revision we bring to you other than what was discussed at the July 10th meeting where you approved it on first reading.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Maybe I'll get into any comments or questions that we might have, but is there any public input at this time? Okay, comments? Anybody? Ms. Roberts, Jeff?
Go back to the revision. So if it is an outdoor advertising billboard sign, it can remain, but not if it is rebranded or changes ownership.
Actually, the outdoor advertising can. It's basically says that outdoor advertising may be maintained and modified, including but not limited to business rebranding, et cetera.
So we make a distinction with other non-conforming signs that if they are rebranded, if the business is rebranded, if there's a change of ownership, rebranding, modification or alteration, any other sign has to be updated to the new standards. But state law prohibits us from doing that in this
All right,
case.
let's say the billboard company sells change of ownership.
Yeah, we can't require them to
Right.
take that down. Somebody had a much bigger lobby in Columbia than other signs.
So even if their electronics goes out on it before we had talked about, hey, if they have to come in and do, that would
They have to be
roll it in.
allowed to maintain that sign.
Yeah, the ones that are existing.
Yeah, the existing sign, right.
Currently, our guidelines state that you can have, well, the number is capped at whatever that number is. I think it's like 15 or so inside the city. You could, under our current guidelines, take one down if it's in a GC district and move it to another location in that GC district, but the total number shall not increase. That will be changing in these guidelines if you approve it, basically saying that the number you see now in their location, that's it. They cannot be
Billboard signs do we have in
removed.
the city, do you know?
I'm sorry?
How many billboard signs do we have in the city? 'Cause they should pay, they have to get a business license.
Yeah, we have an inventory of that. I'm sorry, I don't have that with me, but it's 15 or less. I mean, it's not that many.
And a billboard is defined as,
Well, it's really considered outdoor, the new definition of it is outdoor advertising sign. And again, that will be an off-premise sign that's legally allowed under state code. And again, it's those signs that you see that are larger in nature. You see them as electronic or otherwise.
So Maurice, what's the fine if someone is found violating the code?
If they violate the code, we will try to work with them to ensure compliance. If compliance is not able to get the compliance, we can issue them a courtesy summons and then a uniform summons, which will go to court, and then the court will decide on fines and any recourse of action. We're hoping we won't have to go that far, but again, there is that potential to do so through the courts.
Look, as I go up the street, and you see all the signs flying around, how do you address that? Because they're very popular now.
Oh, those like feather signs and things
Yeah.
like that? They're currently not allowed under our existing guidelines unless you apply for one under a temporary sign permit. It's an enforcement issue. It's something that we try to stay on top of the best we can. As you can see, they pop up all the time, so it's a constant, effort to make sure people are in compliance. But those are not really allowed now, and they will not be allowed in the future.
So they use them because they're less expensive?
They use them because they draw attention to the business. They could be less expensive, yes, but there's a number of reasons why they do that. Sometimes they are necessary. We have temporary sign guidelines currently and proposed where you can apply for a temporary sign for a 30-day period. Say, for instance, if you have a grand opening or something like that, there's a purpose for them then.
Any other questions, comments?
Well, so I guess the easiest way to put it, a billboard sign or outdoor, that would really be any type of sign that is not related to a specific business. Like, let's just say the Ford dealership wanted to put up a huge billboard sign right there in front of the same Ford dealership or whatever.
Right.
That wouldn't be considered, that wouldn't be considered an outdoor sign, would it? Because it's geared toward a specific business, is that correct?
Here's the definition the state uses, and we'll, forward, we'll be using that same definition. So off-premise outdoor advertising sign means a lawfully erected permanent sign which relates in its subject matter to products, accommodations, services, or activities sold or offered elsewhere other than upon the premises on which the sign is located. For the purposes of this chapter, the related threat, leasehold, or other property interest together with a lawfully issued permit is considered to be part of the off-premise outdoor advertising sign.
That's my question.
You mentioned like public input. I mean, what was the public input that we received, or has it been?
We held the Planning Commission public hearing in June. We had someone attend that meeting. We've had a few people call asking general questions about the sign ordinance. We received a couple of letters from agencies or whatever the case may be with some questions. But again, we've had the sign regulations posted on the website for a number of weeks as well, and the word has gotten out. We've talked with several sign companies too, and I think they've been helping us get the word out that new regulations are forthcoming.
I had an email today from Western Upstate, just laying out some concerns they had.
Yes, we received that.
I think we all received it, if I'm not mistaken, if you check your email. Go ahead, Kyle.
Councilman Robertson.
Mayor, I've got a couple more comments.
Yeah.
Regarding the appeals process. It's a little short on details, and I'm just wondering if it needs to be more specific or strengthened. In other words, give examples of grounds for appeals. I think in one of our previous work sessions, we said, for example, financial burdens were not grounds for appeal. But what are grounds for appeals? And let's say you are granted a variance, okay? Should that variance survive the change of ownership, or is it stopped at change of ownership? So I think there could be some additional language to strengthen it, and I'm all in favor of a healthy appeals process.
So I'll add, how we're doing this again is, we've needed to address certain things because of the development pressure on us, from the tree ordinance and landscaping to the sign ordinance and so forth, as things are changing pretty rapidly throughout the city. But as we have the Unified Development Code, as we have the existing zoning code now that's in its entirety, it has a section on that that addresses all the appeals and the hardship and so forth and goes through that. So you're just not seeing in this particular subsection of our zoning ordinance or what will become our Unified Development Ordinance, but you'll see an expanded part of that in the Unified Development Ordinance.
And I will add that, to answer your question about what grounds for appeal, what would constitute a ground for appeal. Say, for instance, there's a particular business that's, older, it's maybe set back from the road differently than everything around it. For whatever reason, new stuff was built around it that kind of obscures its visibility, and maybe they ask for a larger sign so that people can see them a little bit better than what our code allows, and that could be grounds for an appeal. If their lot is oddly shaped for whatever reason, we've got some weird shaped lots out there, we can't account for every single eventuality in our code, so, you know, we have to make it as flexible as we can, and oddly enough, we have to make the language as loose as we can, so that we don't squash some potential appeals that could be out there that we just didn't envision when we wrote the code, right? Right now, so the way that the code does read right now, an appeal or a variance likely wouldn't survive a change of ownership, because at that point it would be considered you know, say there was a change of ownership or rebranding or something like that, that appeal, that variance would be a moot point, because, you know, it was related to whatever business or owner was previously there. So to answer that question, it wouldn't survive beyond that change of ownership, just like any other non-conforming sign.
Do you think that language needs to be added, or it's sufficient in another area?
It's sufficient in the non-conforming section, the way it's written. It's crystal clear. I think if we added additional language someplace else, it might obscure it and make it less clear, actually. So.
And you anticipate that language being carried forward to the
Unified
Unified
Development
Development
Ordinance, which also ties to the state's Planning Enabling Act, which spells out a lot of those conditions as well. So they tie together.
Ms. Roberts, John? Did you have something? I'm sorry.
I have.
Ms. Lockhart?
Just a question. I've read over this several times, and
Hopefully right before bedtime, so it helps you.
usually it puts me to sleep.
Good.
But one of the things I had a question about was, what if you have a nice sign that's been there for a period of time, and somebody runs into this thing, and we have an accident? How is that covered under this sign ordinance?
If it doesn't meet the current guidelines, no matter what happens, whether it's a tornado, a big gust of wind, you know, somebody with
It has to be
a
new
frisbee
product.
that breaks the sign and they have to repair it, if it doesn't meet our current guidelines, then it has to meet the new guidelines when it's repaired.
Anything else, guys?
I think I'm gonna be that guy today that I would like to get more input. I mean, I feel like the email we received today from somebody who wants to sit at the table and go more into detail with this stuff. I mean, I feel like we did it with Upstate Forever. They came in, they raised some good questions. I mean, I'm gonna vote for a sign ordinance. I mean, I don't have an issue with the sign ordinance. And I feel like I'm 98% good with it. I like to be 100% good before I go back to my constituents. Even with the appeals process language and stuff, I mean, I still kind of trying to wrap my head around that as well. That's where I am. But with that, I'll make a motion to postpone until our next council meeting.
We have a first by Mr. Newton.
Yeah, motion.
Yes, ma'am, to,
Second.
we have a second by
Postpone.
Dr. Thompson to postpone. Any additional comments?
Are you going to postpone it or table it?
Continue it.
Continue it.
Continue.
So what would be the process, Mr. Mayor, what would be the process in continuing it to have further discussion on it? Just to clarify some items, or what would be the process of actually doing that?
I think so. I mean, we got an email from Mr. Day, and I think Mr. Day is here tonight, if he would like to speak. But as I read the email, and then just from a layman's point of view, I felt there was maybe some misinterpretation of the language that we intended, maybe the way it was interpreted. Am I reaching Maurice?
Well, I will say Maurice does have that email and list of their concerns. He's willing to
Can you go through those
to go
points
through
for us?
that.
Sure,
chat about
I'll
it.
go those quickly. Yeah, and again, just going through the list that was submitted to us. One item was painted wall signs are prohibited per the guidelines, and the concern was the ordinance should be amended to provide for a streamlined variance for murals. In addition, no existing wall signs should be subject to the amortization schedule in section 1209. But regarding murals, things like that, we do have a comprehensive sign plan. It's listed in the guidelines. something like that could go through that because it's a unique situation of, different type of design. Also, at the city, we do have a public art committee that can act upon murals like we see downtown from time to time, things like that. So it can be addressed in a couple of other manners, like through a comprehensive sign plan that's proposed in the guidelines, or through the public art committee.
Yeah, and I will add too to that, the iconic Coca-Cola signs were mentioned. We treat murals differently in the city because we do recognize those aren't really advertising signs. At one point they were. I mean, there were lots of products that advertised via murals like that, but really those are historic signs that everybody sees as important to community fabric. And so we do handle murals differently in the city. If somebody comes to us with an idea for a mural, we don't subject it to the sign code, because technically any sign code, just about any sign code, wouldn't allow murals to begin with. And we want to allow murals. We have a process for murals. And so we handle those, we pulled those out from the sign code and handle those separately.
A lot of that is just, I feel like if we get staff and whoever has concerns together, I feel like in 2 weeks, we come back, we have a lot of clarity. I would rather do it on the front end with any concerns we have or any organizations in town that they have, other than we pass something and then we come back and say, hey, you didn't look at this. The same way we did with Upstate Forever or these other concerns.
Yeah, and I really appreciate getting these points ahead of time.
Yeah.
Just like Upstate Forever, they gave us points ahead of time, and we were able to address them. So, Maurice is able to kind of talk through some of this if we want to continue. It's up to you guys.
Well, we have a motion on the floor, first and second, and we're kind of in
And I was
discussion.
just asking
Yeah.
the process of how do we do that in 2 weeks? Do we have a public work session? Do we have a one-on-one, whoever sends the email? Do we, have a work session prior to council meeting next time? I was more asking about the actual.
The
What do
mechanism.
we do in 2 weeks to make this?
More palatable.
Yeah,
We
I'm
can-
just, I was asking more of a procedural.
Yeah, we're happy to sit down with Mr. Day after the meeting here and talk through some of their concerns and how we could potentially incorporate those and bring those back to you guys as.
Somewhat as we did with the tree ordinance. with
All right,
I still
and
have a problem
I guess we're
waiting.
also
I don't want to
prepared
make it,
Oh, no.
talk
I
about
have
tonight.
zero problem waiting
Yeah.
2 weeks,
And-
I have zero problem passing it tonight. I don't think making a 2-week is gonna
Well,
break our.
that's what I'm saying.
sidewalk.
We're also prepared to talk about it tonight. We have
Yeah,
the representative
any way you
here.
wanna
We have our staff here.
Yeah, we can wait and talk about it later, or we can talk about it tonight.
Yeah.
We are prepared, so it's up to you guys.
I think I'm hearing from the motion, Mr. Newton obviously wants to wait. Anybody having heartburn?
To wait.
Wait 2 weeks?
Nope.
Okay. We have a first, a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It will be continued.
Well, let me ask for clarification on that. Are we looking for a council work session on that? Or are we looking for?
That's what I was sort of.
That was what he
exactly my
asked.
question.
Well, we were looking for
And y'all wanting to
direction.
do it tonight, just let me know, I don't,
Well, we've already
I don't know
passed
what
it.
that,
It's been passed.
yeah, I know. but
Well,
Are we gonna have a
is that-
work session, or?
Is that the question? Would you like a work session? Is that,
Well,
I
that's-
think it would be important to have a work session for no other reason than he has some concerns.
Okay.
You were gonna talk to him and get some results from that.
Okay.
He has a lot of folks that he's been talking to concerning this matter.
Okay.
And if we can get those concerns to us some way, either through the email or through workshop, I think it'd be a good idea.
Okay.
I think with
I just think you get
the
the
work session and have it action item.
we'll have that work
We can
session,
come
come back and raise
Well,
something.
let's do this. It can go a number of different ways. We never had a work session even when the Upstate Forever folks were here, they gave their suggestions
That's right.
and we,
We accept-
got them and accepted them, and Dave and his folks were able to manage it into it. And so maybe like Ms. Newton's saying, maybe by meeting with Mr. Day and
Clarification.
others for clarification, we might be able to just tweak something else within our ordinance, if that
Amen.
makes sense.
I agree with that.
You good, Dave?
Yeah, I'm good. We'll schedule a work session for next meeting prior to, and we'll also coordinate with the association, and then we'll have an update.
Okay, good. And maybe it's a 30-minute work session, a 5:30 work session.
Yes.
Okay, good. We'll move on to new business, and the first item, new business, is request consideration of an ordinance amending the 2022-2023 annual budget. Mr. McEwen. I'm sorry.
Okay, we have one more item.
One more item. I jumped ahead.
Yeah, so on second reading, we have ordinance
2312, amending section 124 of Article 4 of Chapter 82 of the Anderson City Code to regulate the parking of semi-trucks and other certain vehicles in certain areas of the city of Anderson.
Okay, thank you. This ordinance is really this is something that you see from city to city and a lot of times county ordinances as well. But it's something that needed to be redefined within our ordinance. And the goal of the ordinance is to eliminate oversized commercial vehicles in residential areas. We've had numerous complaints on that throughout the last year. We just had another one just last week where a cab of a semi-truck, 18-wheeler, was essentially just parked in front of a house that they knew the person and was sleeping in the cab of it with the generator running the whole time they were sleeping, just on the public street in a neighborhood, and not even in the driveway itself. And there was a lot of complaints on that. This ordinance would address that because it wouldn't allow an oversized or commercial vehicle of that type to be parked in a residential neighborhood like that. It would need to be in a commercial parking lot. It would be a designated area. Also, we wanted to look at this and not eliminate where you have different trade groups that might take, say, it's electrician, plumber, HVAC services. You see a lot of those where it's either the owner themselves or the employee take the vehicle home to their residence, and then maybe that's their vehicle they drive daily for their job. And so what we did is we measured several vehicles, and we actually amended this ordinance tonight to go to 8.5 feet on height. The reason we did that, so anything above 8.5 feet in height or 25 feet in length shall include any truck, van, trailer, semi-trailer, tractor, wrecker, or similar vehicle. It's considered an oversized commercial vehicle. So we measured F450s, F350s, 250s, all the different size vehicles. And then we measured, the one thing we hadn't measured, and I had our team measure the newest Ford Transit, which is the commercial-based van that you see, which a lot of workers, contractors use those. They have made those higher now, and so the height's just naturally higher, just as we saw with the 350s, the 250s, same thing with the Chevys, heavy duties, and so forth. And we did not, the goal wasn't to just eliminate those type of vehicles from being driven home if you were using that as a contractor, electrician, plumber, etc. Really the goal is so that you're not seeing a semi-truck, a truck with a large trailer that, say, for example, hauls vehicles on a daily basis, being parked in a residential district. And we have those issues now, and we have complaints on that now. So this addresses that. We did look at, again, we always look at other cities' ordinances. This compares to that. However, we're doing an update on the size because just the mere size of a basic heavy-duty 1-ton truck has gone up in height and length. And so this should, this certainly will solve the complaints we've received. And so I recommend this on second reading.
Good. Did we have any public input between first reading and now?
Other than the other complaint we received, have not heard, and that was a complaint involving a vehicle. I've not heard any other public input. Mr. McKenzie, did you? Nothing there? Okay, nothing in the planning office either.
Okay. Any questions, council? Ms. Roberts, Jeff?
David, how would this apply to, let's say, it's not technically a trailer because it wouldn't have wheels, but a container that is that could have an axle put under it, but is parked on the ground without an axle.
Okay, the
Use
pods and so
storage
forth,
pod,
yeah, the
that's what
pods,
yeah.
the dumpsters and so forth like that, are usually attached to the work permit for that site, which we require you to, like say you're working on a site, we require, a dumpster to be on site as part of the construction or the remodel in certain circumstances. And so, it would go into that category. Mr. McKenzie, do you want to expand on that? I know we've dealt with pods and we've dealt with, those different types of.
Well, let's say it's not part of a construction project. Someone
Okay.
just parks a container on their lot because they need storage, and it's 40 feet long, and you know what I'm getting at.
Oh, gotcha, yes, so that would be actually considered, you can consider that as an accessory structure. And, that's what, a lot of times people use them permanently, and use them for storage, and so that would be an accessory, facility or accessory structure to the residential, say, house or whatnot. And that's actually, Maurice, if you want to talk about that in more detail, but I'm kind of giving the 30,000 viewpoint here, but that's regulated as well, so.
Yeah, those are regulated. One thing that we see from time to time are the pods that are dropped off when somebody's moving and they're loading their furniture, everything else. Standards really don't have a lot of teeth in that, but we just try to work with people the best we can. If you're going to have it in your driveway during a period of moving for a week, we allow that. If it lasts longer than that, then it would be considered a violation. Like Mr. McEwen mentioned, we look at them as accessory structures. You can't have accessory structures in front yards, things like that.
So through a series of complaints, it may get addressed. Is that the way it works?
Your complaints, or we'll be watching it, yeah, in certain instances, correct.
So in theory, I mean, so we've dealt with it from a zoning standpoint, even about a year ago, particularly on one, that became an issue, and it was in one of the historic districts, and so it was actually regulated too by the BAR and the zoning code, and it didn't meet our code, and so we had to deal with that, and it was being built. And it was considered accessory structure that had been approved by the BAR and also did not meet our zoning and setbacks for that as well. If you had, essentially, I'm just thinking in my mind now that you brought up, just a container just dropped off in your backyard and you just decide that's what you're going to use for storage. I mean, it's still considered an accessory structure, but if you're outside of the historic district and it meets our setbacks and so forth, right now, it doesn't really speak exactly to that.
That's right.
So it, not speaking exactly to the look of it or what it is, other than that we're going to classify that as an accessory structure and it meets the setbacks from the property line and so forth as an accessory structure, then it would be allowed. Now we can deal with that while we're working on the zoning code.
They would need to have a permanent foundation.
Speak.
Is it an accessory structure?
Yes, sir.
Well, we
Ms.
see
Lovett.
blocks sometimes will have them.
One other question. It says commercial. You mentioned a few minutes ago about a cab over truck or a truck, a big diesel truck that they turned the generator on and kept it on all night and all that jazz. What about motorhomes? And they do have generators on them and they do the same thing and they're big too. Would that be included in this or not?
No, not in this term. So we already have it regulated where, say, a boat or a motorhome has to be in your backyard. They can't just be in the front driveway or the side driveway, so that's already addressed. And we have those complaints when we deal with those.
Okay.
So that's something that's already in place.
Whether this
And then you couldn't, in the example I gave about the cab and how somebody was living in it, you can't just live in a motorhome in the backyard of your house
I
either.
have seen
Jeff,
motorhomes
did
parked
you get
on the
it?
driveway beside the car.
Right, so if it's not to the rear
One more time.
of the house, it wouldn't be compliant.
Okay.
Let's swing back to Jeff Roberts right quick, then Tony.
All right, going back to the container situation, I'm not in favor of allowing them, okay? I'm okay with moving forward with this, but I think it should be addressed in some manner, whether the language is amended here or in another, somewhere else, in another code somewhere, but I don't think they should be allowed to be used, dropped off and used in someone's yard. I mean,
Yeah, well,
it's not a vehicle, but it's still.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you.
think-
Would we want to address that in the accessory structure, you think?
I think the best way to do that, because honestly, when you look at it, there's really no difference between a pod and one of those handy houses on the side of the road you buy that gets dropped off and delivered and used as an accessory structure. It would be appropriate if it's in the right location, meets the setbacks, and is tied down permanently, just like any other accessory dwelling unit, or accessory unit. So I think it's probably best to handle that in the zoning ordinance. And we can easily handle that as we make revisions to the zoning ordinance. We can make sure we address and prohibit that use, by saying something along the lines of accessory units can only be in the side or backyard of houses, and they have to be tied permanently, meet setbacks, that sort of thing.
And define it a little bit more.
And then we could, temporary uses,
Yeah, and one thing we have in our current guidelines, accessory uses cannot occupy more than, I think it's 1/3 of the rear yard, or whatever the case may be. There's a allowance for amount of accessory use you can have covering your rear yard. So that could be looked at a little closer as well.
So what you're saying, though, it would be allowed, but under certain restrictions.
Because if you look at a pod, it's a pod, but it's got it's a rectangular box with a roll-up door. It's very similar to something I could buy on the side of the road as an accessory unit. It's an accessory building. But it would just have to be in the right location and the right use.
Yeah, and it probably doesn't belong in this vehicle ordinance because it's not a vehicle.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so that's what we're saying. Address it in the accessory structure, and you could also define, and I was just thinking in my head,
Like the
temporary
length of time,
use, temporary use type, to include containers, et cetera, and have a definition on that.
Yeah, we could add a duration.
So what we can do is take Mr. Roberts's thought process further along in zoning it at some point in time. Thanks for bringing it up. Tony?
Enforcement piece, is this, I know that our chief was here last time, this would be something police or zoning enforces?
Both.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Enforcement.
I mean, first go to, on a daily basis, it would first go to, zoning and codes enforcement, but however, police could also respond and handle the situation. I know the other complaint we received was after hours, so in that case, the police could easily handle that situation. I'm sure by just asking them to educate them, asking them to leave.
All right, thank you.
Good. Anything else, guys?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we pass the second, reading.
First by the Mayor Pro Tem, second by Mr. Harvey. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously on the second and final reading. Now on to new business. On the first item of new business, we request consideration of an ordinance amending the 2022-2023 annual budget. Mr. McEwen.
Okay, thank you. Each year you see this, again, this is reflecting our old budget, last year's budget, not the current budget that we're in now. And we do this to reconcile the budget to things that we approved throughout the year that weren't anticipated, or grants that we received. So instead of, when we're in the budgeting process, guessing an amount of revenue that we would get from grants, that would be, and then matching that to expenses, that would be a little bit irresponsible because you're making speculations about grants that are competitive and you may or may not get. However, as we receive those, as we apply for those, or receive them throughout the years, of course we get a lot of federal money that comes to our way, sometimes surprisingly comes to us, through COVID, for example, we get Department of Public Safety grants and so forth. Then we want to reflect that in the budget process, but also that's reflected better in our, they don't call them CAFR anymore, but our annual report. It used to be the CAFR. So it's our audit or annual report. And with that, Ms. Marvin Martin, our Chief Financial Officer, can go through the items for you, or summary of them.
Thank you. So as David mentioned, the council adopted our original budget in June of 2022. And so this budget amendment request is to reflect City Council approval of revenues and expenditures that occurred after the original budget was implemented, grants received, or use of prior year funds for projects that carried forward into the new year. This amendment will allow the budget and audit to more accurately reflect actual revenues received and expenditures made that were unknown when the budget was originally adopted, making comparisons between budget and actual more meaningful. So the detailed ordinance was included in your packet, but I'm going to go over some highlights. So we are increasing the budget for grants received in fiscal year 23. The police department received a grant for 35 dash cameras from the South Carolina Department of Public Safety. That's $299,604. We also had Appalachian Regional Council and the USDA grants received in 2023 for the Shared Kitchen Construction Project. We are increasing the general fund budget for use of our American Rescue Funds for the Hammett Acres Pipe Replacement Project. As you recall, we received $14.5 million, but we can only record the revenues when we draw down the funds. So you'll be seeing that amendment for the next few years. This budget amendment also reflects use of general funds prior year fund balances for purchases and projects that were carried forward into the 23 year. That includes the capital lease that we had last year for equipment that was not received until this year, $645,000. We also have an increase for the Brownfields grant. That is a 3-year grant. It was $300,000, and we had $51,000 this year. It also reflects use of prior year monies received in the police department for commissary and paytail funds. Monies were received last year but spent this year, including monies for a jail control system and a speed radar message trailer. The budget amendment also reflects receipt of police e-share revenues and related equipment that were purchased this year. And then we are council approved this in February of 23. We had money in restricted fund balance that we had received from FEMA, and we are moving that to unrestricted fund balance to pay for the Station 1 pad replacement project. And then we also had an easement purchase that council approved for $20,000 that we had to use fund balance for. We also had carryover of the hospitality fund project bonds for the phase 3 of the recreation center of $1.3 million. The bonds were received in 22, but the funds were carried over again to this year, as well as the recreation center lobby security renovations. And we also increasing the cemetery fund, increasing the cemetery fund budget to reflect funds received as donations, as well as city funds portions for the old Silverbrook cemetery front entrance, total of $53,000. So we are requesting approval of this ordinance, amending the 22-23 annual budget by increasing the general fund budget $2,240,836, the stormwater budget $229,384, the cemetery budget $53,350, hospitality fund budget $1,707,194, and the transit fund budget $7,854 on first reading. Thank you.
Okay, very good. What's the police e-share revenue? Somebody give me a definition.
Yeah, so that's money seized through law enforcement activities into drug enforcement.
Our share of that.
Yeah, our share of that.
Once the case is settled, the money moves in and they're allowed to use it for police related.
Of a federal task force we're a part of.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I have a comment.
Go right ahead.
I would like to say thank you, Margot, for all the work you did on that.
Thank you.
I would also like to say, whoever's writing these grants, keep on writing them. It really helps the city in lots and lots of ways. So.
And a lot of our, not a lot, but, you know, the American Rescue Act, which is a federal program, benefited our cities and a lot of cities across the country, for sure. it moved a lot of projects ahead that would have still been in the hopper, so to speak. So, any other questions, comments? Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Yep, first by Dr. Thompson, second by Mr. Lockridge. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously on the first reading.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item of new business is requests, consideration of a resolution recommending to the Anderson County Transportation Committee, the ACTC, the repaving of Mystic Vineyards Lane and Chardonnay Drive within the city limits. Chardonnay Drive within the city limits. Ms. McEwen?
Okay, we've had some discussion on this neighborhood, and it's just spelling out the roads in it, about the situation there as far as the development standpoint, then the road not being finished to standards. With that, I've been working with many of you who have been working with your constituents on this matter, and we appreciate that. Particularly Mr. Newton has led a lot of effort there, and we appreciate Mr. Newton working with his constituents and us seeing how we can help out the situation. And with that, we brought in our city engineer, LaCarisha, and she has been working through the process of seeing how we can remediate the road situation, and she'll go through some of the details of this resolution we're requesting and why.
Thank you, Mr. McEwen. Mayor and council, the request we're bringing to you today is for a resolution recommending funding for the paving of Mystic Vineyards subdivision from the Anderson County Transportation Committee. This subdivision began construction in 2005. All the infrastructure in the subdivision was completed except for the final pavement surface. Earlier this year, the city requested a draw on the developer's letter of credit once it became apparent that he did not intend to honor his commitments to the city or the residents to pave the subdivision. The estimated cost for paving Mystic Vineyards at today's prices is $320,000. The draw on the letter of credit was only $78,000, so that leaves us with $240,000 approximately that we need to come up with. So this resolution, we're requesting those funds from the ACTC, and this resolution is to go with our package, with our request to them.
Thank you. Any time frame on when's their meeting?
They have one coming up, I believe it's August 21st is their next one. So we'll be working with them, and feel free to reach out to them as well and express your recommendation, your opinion on the situation as you're aware of it. We would like to certainly help out the residents there as quickly as we can. They did put out, we were awarded $1.2 million in road paving for this year, and I say this year, but they do a 2-year contract, and so we were hoping to get on, just amended, the contract be amended and have this road be placed on there. Funds do come in, quarterly to the ACTC, so not sure what they're looking at right now, if it'll get approved or could get approved at the August 21st meeting or a future meeting. But we feel like this is the best pathway for it being funded. And meanwhile, we'll also help out and go out there, do some curb repairs. If there's a pothole, we're going to deal with it and so forth. So, hey, I couldn't answer your exact question, but we're lobbying for the 21st meeting, and this is this was a step in the direction that we need a resolution from council.
This subdivision we spent a lot of time on this subdivision, on a lot of different things. Mr. Stewart?
So is there a good solid base down on that road right now? You know, if we're gonna just ask the transportation committee to come and pave it, just wanna make sure there's a good base before they come out and start paving. Or will they build up everything and start fresh all over again?
City engineer for.
So with the Transportation Committee, the first thing they do is the ACTC has an engineering firm that is used for all the projects. So the first step is they would approve to have the engineering firm go out. They do some testing. They make a recommendation about what needs to be done out there. I've talked to them, and they did not seem to think off the record that we would have to do a major reconstruction or anything like that. So they may need to mill some and then replace, but the final surface has not been put on at all. So this is just the intermediate course or the base course of pavement. It's actually held up remarkably well because we have a couple of other subdivisions that were the same age. Oak Hill and Axman Oaks both had this situation, and this pavement's in better shape, I think, than both of those were. So that's their first step, and they go with whatever the engineering firm recommends
Gotcha.
that they do.
Thanks. Mr. Roberts, Jeff?
Let's say in the event that the ACTC does not fund this project and it's moved to another cycle or beyond, I mean, it could be delayed for, what'd you say, they meet quarterly?
Right, they meet quarterly.
It's
That's your understanding, but
Yeah.
the money comes in quarterly too from the state,
Okay,
so
but-
they
but let's
know
just say they
what their
don't
balance
approve
is,
it, they've
right.
got other priorities, and, all right, so now we're gonna string out our constituents even longer, but here's where I'm going. What about a special tax district, and then we go ahead and just pave it, and then we'll collect it on the back end?
There's a lot more to that because a special tax district, consent of the county council, the school district, and so forth to be set up, and you're talking about you're talking about almost the cost of the paving legal fees to set that up. So that would be a nice way to do it, but it's not or be a nice method to do it, but it's not a simple way or a cost-effective way to do it. So we'd have to find another means to do it ultimately if it wasn't funded, which would probably just be adjusting, we have of course we have a lot of capital needs in our own facilities, but it would take away from a capital need of our own facility, and we would ultimately, if council decides, pivot out of our general fund. But I feel confident though that, ACTC can fund this project at some point. It may just not be immediate, but I feel like Mr. Newton's talked to the residents the most and been a good ambassador for the city on this. But if they know we're working towards a solution, and that hasn't been with the development. They were trying to do that with the developer and through their own means for a long time. Now they're making some headway with us because we're behind them.
I'll speak briefly on the situation. Really probably for over a year now. I've had some meetings out there. I know Mr. McEwen and his staff's been extremely gracious. They've done a great job going out there. Got Frankie to come out there one night. Lucretia's been out there multiple times with Adam, Ken, Maurice. A lot of people have worked on this project. I think it's one of those situations to where, and Lucretia could speak a lot more than I could about how much the city tried to work with the developer who developed that neighborhood. I think Mr. McEwen and his staff kind of bent over backwards trying to make this work. I think everybody knows that's the ideal situation. But when somebody picks up and says, take the bond, I'm never developing anything again, and they move states, that makes it difficult for neighborhoods and constituents. And I think the neighborhood's been very patient. They've gone through a lot. I think they're very excited to work with the city on this, and this isn't really the last hurdle they're overcoming. They've got other things they're trying to claw back from that developer. This is one kind of token that I think we can do to help rectify that situation. I've talked to some of the ACTC members, and I plan on going on the 21st, and just because everything's political sometimes. I think this is a great option for that neighborhood, and with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Have a first by Mr. Newton,
Second.
second by Mr. Stewart. Any further discussion?
Mayor,
Mr. John Roberts?
more of a statement, a question possibly, but, so the 78,000 versus the 300 and whatever thousand, I'm assuming that's due to timeframe of startup and construction and inflation on cost of paving today's rates, mainly?
That's a lot of it, and as the road has deteriorated over time, and we calculate the letter of credit, I calculate it a little differently than it used to be done. So I would have required more, but
My general statement was, I hope moving forward, we can do something to protect all our citizens and our tax dollars that we all pay, but, I don't know what that method is, what it looks like, and first time we've had to call one, I guess.
First time we've had to call one, we came close on another situation. However,
Well,
they
we
did not want
threatened-
us to call it.
We threatened before.
Threatened one, but that got worked out.
Right.
But anyway, just to safeguard us in the future, I hope to see, should, a delayed circumstance of 15 years at least, right?
yeah, we've been working for the last 4 or 5 years. You don't want to call it if you don't have to. It's not good for anybody. And yeah, we're going to pave it. We've met with a developer and a paver out there doing the estimate, marking the spots for repair. I've done it every year since I've been here, which is only 5 years, but that's still 5 more times than most of them do. So.
Thank you.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Lucretia, but the ACTC asked for a 10% match on paving, but in this instance, we could apply the entirety of the 78,262.
Right, that is our plan. They request a 10% match. Some municipalities that don't have a tax base do no match, but generally the county and the city, minimum of 10%. So no one ever gives more, but we're gonna.
Thank you for all your hard work on this.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously on the resolution. Our third item of new business is request consideration of an ordinance authorizing the execution of an easement to Anderson County across city property at 1305 Whitehall Road. Mr. McEwen.
Okay, we have a simple request from Anderson County on this. This is really a normal process. I know we recently did one for Duke Energy in 2 different locations. This is Whitehall Road. We do have a water facility there, which is one of our storage facilities, a water tank. And with this, of course, anytime we convey land or an easement, we have to do that by ordinance when we convey it. Frankie, you want to cover some of the other details to it of the request?
David basically covered this skirting the edge of this property where we have a water tank to lay a sewer line. It's not going to affect our use of the property at all. Benefit to everybody.
And that's the water tank on behind
Whitehall
the
Road.
new county facility, or their facility on 28. Any questions, comments?
I make a motion to approve, Mr. Mayor.
And I second it.
We have a first by Mr. Harvin, second by Mr. Lawford. Mr. Stewart?
They need this easement to do what with?
Sewer line.
They're running is it, Mr. Banks, is it a force main, or is a force main from a lift station that they have? Which
First, second. Any other
ultimately ends
questions?
up in our collection system.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously on the first reading. Our fourth item of new business is request consideration of a resolution to certify 118 North Fence Street as an abandoned building. Ms. McEwen?
Okay, thank you. Yes, these last 2 items, we routinely do this as part of economic development, community development efforts. Mr. McLean has prepared these, and we'll go over them.
First one on 118 North Fence Street, this was a request of a company that's going to put a medical facility there. It's down where, if you know where the CNX
It's the Pickens.
Railroad.
Pickens building.
place area was in there yet. And it hadn't been used for a good while, so they're just asking that we certify this an abandoned building for purposes of them getting income tax credits.
From the state income tax credits.
How long does it have to be abandoned, Mr. McLean, to be considered?
5 years.
5 years.
5 years. The whole building, at least 60% of it has to be abandoned. So there's some instances where we could do it, whereas the building may have some business in it. But this one, I'm pretty sure hadn't had any.
This is, in my council district, and I think it's gonna be a great development, because it's gonna go all the way down East Whitney Street, good ways, new office facility right across from old McCann's. So it's gonna really perk up that corner right there. I'll make a motion that we approve. Second.
First by Mr. Stewart, second by Mr. Newton. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Our last item of new business is request consideration of a resolution to certify 118 East Earl Street as abandoned property site.
Mr. McClung.
Okay.
Mr. McClung.
Okay, this is the same situation. This is actually the rock building that we purchased a good while back, and it's been out of use for a number of years. I'm not sure what it used to be, but it hadn't been used, and it's going to be developed. My understanding, I'm not sure what, but they have purchased it, and they're looking for same income tax type credit for their development of East Earl Street. It's right there.
The rock building.
It's the rock building.
Yes.
When we were in there, it was a mess. Hopefully they're gonna do something with it.
And we've talked about that, it's been a little while, but as the economic development project, it's just now this part of the process coming to the
Does
the
that
table
mean
for
that
action.
they are getting closer to?
It certainly looks like it.
Okay.
Say something, say.
Yeah.
Good. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve.
First by the Mayor Pro Tem, second by Dr. Thompson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Having no more new business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
First by Mr. Newton.
Second.
Second by Dr. Thompson. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.